Okay, so welcome everybody. This is the Friday, April 28th edition of the Abel Marketing Facebook Live, and I have a guest today, and I'm going to introduce her as we get started for our Facebook Live discussion. And I'm going to drop Victoria Cowan's information in the chat and share it with you now, because this is a nice meeting between Victoria and I happened a couple weeks ago at a networking event in North Vancouver. And we are both copywriters. So I'm just going to put this up in the background while we chat a little bit so you can look at Victoria's website. So welcome, Victoria.
Thank you. I hope everything loads properly.
Oh, yeah. Well, yeah, no,
You got it. Okay.
It does. I checked it. So we can see your website while we chat. So I do these Facebook Lives. I try to do them every Friday with guests. We talk a little bit about the guests themselves, their business. I've sent you the questions. And what's kind of interesting about this one is I think this is the first time I've ever had a fellow copywriter on one of these. So that's kind of cool because we both do the same thing, albeit maybe a little differently. So why don't you start out by telling us a bit about yourself and then a little bit about the company?
Sure. So as Ben said, my name is Victoria. I am a copywriter, content writer, brand strategist, and I also do a bit of UX writing as well. So
Okay.
kind of a multi-passionate writer. I'm originally from Saskatoon, Saskatchewan, and I moved out to Vancouver almost 9 years ago now to do my master's in English. So marketing was never in the cards at that time. You know, when I moved out here,
Right.
I've had a very nonlinear career path, especially after finishing my degree. I hopped around in retail, hospitality, but it was a role at Shopify in 2018 that really turned me
Okay.
on to tech and digital marketing and sort of
Okay.
took me in a different direction. So it would still be a few years before I actually started my business, but that role in customer success was a great exposure to the world of e-commerce, digital
I would
marketing,
think so.
support entrepreneurs.
I would think so. That's kind
I
of the place to start, right? Especially when someone sees maybe that on your resume, that you're working at a fairly high profile place like Shopify. For myself, I've never used Shopify, so I don't really know much about it, but everybody talks about it now as
well,
like one of the go-to things about how to build like online platforms and websites, right?
yeah. The cool thing about Shopify is that they're really trying to make commerce better for everyone. And
Right. Okay.
obviously I worked there in 2018. A lot of things have changed because of the things that we've gone through collectively since then. But I think they've always done a good job of trying to change the industry and be innovative.
Right.
For instance, they adopted a remote first. Sorry, there we'll get the the bubbles out of the way.
That's all good. That's all good. You're good. You're
Um,
good.
remote first policy during the pandemic. I
Right.
worked when I was there in 2018, you know, before it was maybe more common to do so. But I always understood them to be a very progressive, forward focused company, and I really enjoyed my
Right.
time. So, yeah.
Right. Okay. So let's move on a little bit then. So we got a little bit of background about your MA, doing English, entering the world of tech, copywriting, moving from Saskatoon to Vancouver, which I actually think I actually know a lot of people who've done that.
Yes, you
For some
must.
reason, a lot of
Oh, yes,
Saskatchewan folks who move out here, right?
must have to do with the winter that we have in Saskatchewan.
Which I've never experienced, but
Ooh,
we've had some slight inklings this winter in Vancouver, but I think that's basically nothing
sure have. Yeah.
compared to that. It's not sustained for several months. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about the company because it's interesting too with Wordplay Creative, right? Because I'm just going to throw the website up again just so people can have a peek at it while we chat. And you got a couple things in here that I found really interesting.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I mean, so you talk about igniting your audience. So why don't you talk a little bit about igniting your audience?
Sure. So, first of all, I'll say that Wordplay didn't start off as a copywriting business. When
Okay.
I founded it in 2020, it started off as a sort of everything under the sun digital services business.
Yes,
Let's
yes, of course, of course. as
Yes.
we all do, and then we get more focused, like I
And
have.
then
But
exactly, we get a little more focused over time. So, I actually took some business coaching at the end of last year with my friend Julia Falchi, and something I really found useful about that was forcing me to do the things for my business that I often do for other businesses. I don't know if you can relate to that, Ben,
yeah,
but
I can a little bit. I mean, I think I have 3 service areas with Abel marketing, but realizing that if I focused on one area, it would help in copywriting, and then realizing exactly how much experience I have with copywriting and content writing anyway from all the work I've done for people and freelance work, it kind of made sense for me to focus on copywriting. And I got advice from someone about that who has been on my Facebook Live, Kendra Weiss. I'll mention her, and she helps me do accounting, but she does a lot of work with small businesses, and I'm writing all the content for her website.
wow.
She's talking about, because she's trying to move to doing strategic business advising. She's like, you should focus on copywriting, and you have experience. So I can relate to it completely.
Yep. It's been an interesting journey, and
Right.
it definitely felt like a huge light bulb moment when I finally allowed myself to specialize. Uh, Now we know, of course, that copywriting is a really big world. There's lots of different ways that you can approach the industry, and I'm still at a place where I like to support multiple different types of industries and
Okay.
businesses. So, anyways, let me talk a little bit about our tagline: "Ignite your audience." I've always been a people focused person. That's probably why we're having this
I
conversation,
would say
Ben.
so. Yeah. I
Yeah.
would say so.
uh, I, I've done a lot of customer service,
Yeah.
customer facing jobs, since I started working when I was 15. So I've been in the sort of in customer facing roles for a very long time. And just you hear the common refrains over and over again when you're doing sales or providing service. It's not about so much the company itself, it's what the customer gets out of
Right.
it, right? The concept of customer centricity or being client focused.
Right.
It's not we're the best company, we provide the best products, we provide the best services. uh, you'll see a lot of that. It's more about how does this actually benefit the customer,
Right.
and getting in the customer's head and understanding their pain points,
Yeah.
their dreams, their fears, all the things, so that you can write something that really speaks to them,
Right.
almost like a lightning bolt,
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
where you're
No, I
like,
agree. I agree. I mean, I've done a lot of stuff on audience research and customer pain
yes,
points, and a lot of like psychology of like why people buy. Right.
100%.
Fascinating.
It's The writing is actually the tip of the iceberg when
Yeah.
it comes to what copywriting is. There's this huge world underneath
Yeah.
where it's like voice of the customer data. You could do competitor
Yeah.
research. You can do that research which behind the psychology behind motivation, but
Yeah.
also purchasing decisions. So
Oh, yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
and
No, we're right on the same page. Yeah. That's why I knew
yep.
this would be a good
So
discussion.
oh, thank you. Well, and that's why I do what I do, because I really love like, it goes beyond just enjoying storytelling. I know we're both storytellers, and
Exactly.
there's a lot of
Exactly. Yeah.
it's about making a difference for
Right.
someone. We live in a noisy world. There's a lot of digital marketing. A lot of it I see as single serve, short-term value,
Yeah.
but not creating long-term gain.
Yeah.
And we try and do things a little different. We definitely believe in quality over
Okay.
quantity. There's room for both, of course, don't get me wrong.
Right.
It depends on the digital channel that we're talking about.
Right.
But I really care about crafting something authentic that's really gonna resonate
Right.
and build long-term loyalty, not just get that first purchase. So, it goes a bit deeper. I'm definitely a bit of a philosophical person
Fair
about
enough.
it.
Fair enough.
Probably comes from my education and training, but I find that to be the most satisfying part
Yeah,
of it.
and I think that's a great segue to one of the next questions that I sent you prior. Like when you're starting the process, um, and you're starting to work with a new client, like what's your like how do you get started with a new client? What do
Yeah,
you do?
so
What do you do?
sure.
Just so people know.
So the first step for me is always having an in-depth consultation.
Right.
And this goes beyond just the initial sales call,
Yeah, of
like
course.
maybe that 30-minute discovery. We just kind of get to know each other, see if there's some synergy there,
Hmm.
see if we're on the same page about the values we take to our work,
Yeah.
and do they trust the process? Do they have a degree of awareness about their marketing and what could need some support? So that's helpful for me. But then, yeah, we really dive in. I used to call them life story interviews when I was working primarily with small business owners
Hmm.
or solopreneurs. That was more when I first started. So now it's more like a brand story interview,
Which is,
and
yeah, yeah, the
exactly.
common term, right?
So very common, but it is an in-depth consultation, and I really just want to understand, more than what makes them tick, like the deep tissue
Mm,
within their business. I want to get below the surface, and really understand those sorts of foundational principles.
right.
Obviously, mission,
Yeah,
vision,
right.
values. Even if they don't know how to articulate those yet, they're often already there. So I actually call this process brand excavation,
Hmm.
excavation rather than
Yeah, no, it's a great term
discovery.
for it. I think people I think like even this conversation, we kind of have to dumb it down for people too. But I think we all
Yeah,
it's good that we could that you and I can talk about it. But you sort of have to clarify for the audience,
for
right?
sure.
That it's in simple terms. And I think one thing, and maybe you can share in this too, is oftentimes you're right, people don't know. But I think what's part of the process is too, is you kind of have to keep going sometimes, right? Because people put up barriers to it, or they'll not realize that's what they're really needing to know, or that's what you really mean. But it
Yep.
forces them to think, right?
Yes. Like, again, the writing is only the tip of the iceberg.
Yeah.
It's often that interviewing process and the process of prompting self-reflection.
Yeah.
Uh, I think all business owners can agree. I know I certainly feel this way, that oftentimes we're just so caught up in the daily running of the
Yeah.
business that we don't often get that time to kind of step above it
Yeah.
and reflect.
Yeah.
And it can be really helpful to have, a caring, sort of passionate guide
Hmm.
that can ask the right questions. So, um, yeah, I love interviewing. I love just having a conversation with people. Like, we had a conversation when we first
Yeah,
met,
exactly. That was
and
2 weeks ago. That's hard to believe.
and you just get people you make them comfortable, feel at ease, and you create that space for them to really think about, well, why do I do what I do
Right.
beyond just making, right? Because it's got to go deeper than that. And everyone does have a reason.
Yeah.
It just sometimes takes a little sort of teasing out to find the why,
That's
right?
right. And you know what I think what it also is too is it's a challenge to, I think, force people to go that deep, and it also it probably makes them quite uncomfortable, right? Because you're really having to, like, I don't think grilling them is the right word. You just have to make really sure, and you're actually trying to help them really understand why they want you to do this project and do the copywriting and do the website, because so much of it is these days just put up a website, just write some content or get chat gpt to generate some content for your business, generic stuff. But you don't realize that people are going to check you out on the web, or they're going to look at you on Google. And when they come to that and they see that content or they see the website, they have a good they realize, oh yeah, right, like there's actual people looking at this stuff that might actually buy from me. So we're
Real
forcing you
humans.
to examine these questions about your copy and your content so that you actually get customers from doing it. Like it's not just an exercise we're doing for fun, right?
I know, it's
Right? It's
not
a
we're
serious
not
thing,
just
right?
writing
It's a serious
we
thing.
love
Content
to
and
write.
copy is a serious thing.
It is, and you know what? Today's consumers, they're really sophisticated.
Yep.
A lot of people have now, spent how many years with Facebook,
Yep.
for instance. I think they've been on Facebook for, well, let's just say over a decade,
Oh, more
and
than that, I
people.
think, but you're right.
Yeah, exactly. And the younger generation, they've grown up with this technology.
Yep.
It's really easy for them to point out, something that's low quality, generic,
Yep.
and only built with the short term in
Oh
mind,
yeah.
almost like a
Oh yeah.
manipulation, right?
Yep.
Uh, so it's even more important to define your why. And I'm sorry, I'm reading Simon Sinek's
Oh, no, no, no,
Start With
no.
Why.
I've talked a lot about that
Okay.
in my own work with someone who helped me with coaching, and he's been on the show before. That's Marshall Stern, and I've done like his program called the Create program. We talk a lot about what is your why. And I had to really examine, and I sometimes have to go back and reread what my why is to sort of emphasize it, right? And remember it. And that's what you're doing here when you're helping people with copywriting, right?
Yes.
And they're like, what does this mean? Like, what is this? What?
And why is it important? How does this connect to me running a better business,
Exactly.
right?
Exactly.
It can seem very intangible.
Yeah. Oh, that's
but
exactly the right word. Yeah.
I certainly believe that, long-term successful businesses, they know how to create loyalty with clients. So
Yep.
again, it's not just the initial sale, because anyone can throw up like a really attractive, it's almost too good to be true short deal and maybe get that initial sale, but they might not get that repeat purchase.
And that's the key.
And
That's the key.
and that's the key. And to build, a devoted following,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
There are companies, because they were doing that prior to the pandemic or prior to any sort of economic downturn, they're able to weather the storm more effectively
Yeah.
because they already had this long-term strategy in play. Um, and, I think if we're going to do business, I know there's so many different reasons for entering a business, and mine was very atypical and not totally ordinary at the same time. But I think we all want to create something of lasting value that could sustain
Yeah.
us and, not just a blip on the map, something that can actually be built for the long term.
Yeah.
And
Exactly.
so there's certain actions we have to take, especially in our marketing, uh, to kind of set us in the right direction. And obviously, you and I are biased. We think copywriting, content writing,
Mm-hmm.
voice, brand personality,
Yeah.
like it's all part of a bigger picture. But when you don't have it, you can tell for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. One of the questions I was going to ask you too is like, what is your most exciting project to date? Do you have something current that we can share? And
Oh,
is there like a website we can share or some links or something like
ooh,
that?
that's I was thinking about that.
Yeah. Because
It's fun.
it's one of the reasons why I do Facebook Live, right? Like actually showcase some of your work and not just your company website, because I think people people expect that.
Well, I hope they see it as well written. Certainly, it's funny, once you put up a website, you always want to change it. Like that's certainly
Oh, yeah.
my
Oh, yeah.
impulse.
Yeah.
Um, Let me think, because I have a project that's going to be launching shortly,
Okay.
hopefully next week.
Okay.
It's a website. I've done a lot of website copy. I've
I'm
done,
sure you have.
well, 30 websites at
Nice.
this point.
That's awesome.
Uh, yeah, I've reached that milestone lately, and it felt really cool
Good
to
for you.
be,
That's an awesome
you know,
milestone.
start small and then it starts to snowball. So it's for a corporate and commercial lawyer in
Oh,
Toronto. I'm not
interesting.
sure if
Okay.
I can say his name just yet, but the
No
thing
problem.
about him, he takes an entrepreneurial lens and mindset to everything he does, even being a lawyer, right?
Interesting.
He prior to starting his own firm, he was on a partnership trajectory with one of Canada's biggest commercial law firms, but he wasn't satisfied with that. He didn't see it as a place where he could really make impact.
Yeah. Right.
And then, yeah, and then he actually uh, tried starting up a tech company within the hospitality industry and invested, 18 months of blood, sweat, and tears into that before it ultimately didn't work out. And so he thought, how can I combine my love of entrepreneurship and that sort of gritty innovation with my legal knowledge?
Right.
And so his law firm was born. Since that time, I think it's been running 7 years now. I think he's built over $1 million book of business. He's reached $100,000 months. Like he's become very successful,
Right.
but that's because he's extremely principled. And so, how does this relate to copywriting? Okay,
Yeah. No, fair enough.
we were
I'm listening.
we were connected. A collaborator and I often work with website
Like
designers,
me.
brand designers. I'm sure you do as
Yeah.
well. So a collaborator of mine, Twist Creative, Jeremy Ing,
Okay.
him and I were connected to this lawyer at the end of last year to do a full rebrand.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So we didn't just do, the logo. We actually ended up renaming the
Oh,
company.
wow.
It was his first,
Exciting.
or it was his last name, which is very common in law.
Right.
But he wanted to build a brand because for him, his larger purpose is to create, well, not just a business he can sell, but to be able to coach other people through the process. Right? He's always starting with the end game in mind. This is really a promotion for this law firm, but
Hey, no worries. No worries.
through a series of interviews, we were able to, like I said, understand the deep tissue
Hmm.
of who he is, why he does what he does, why he serves the clients the way he does, in order to create comprehensive brand guidelines.
Right.
So the mission, the
Yeah.
vision, the value statements,
Yeah.
um, the unique selling proposition, the thing that gives him that edge within a saturated market, and also just to tell his story. And that actually gave way to then doing the website for him. So I would like to be able to share the website with you, but
Yeah.
it's
I
not
just wanted to
launching until.
highlight one of your projects so people could look at it.
Oh, thank you. What I will do is I'm going to get to my portfolio
Awesome.
if you want to show people that.
Yeah. Send it to me right now.
Um,
I'll share it because we're just about out of time and we've covered all the questions.
yeah,
Yeah. 20
sure.
minutes is usually
Um,
pretty good. I put these all on
cool.
my YouTube channel too. So
Awesome. Well, and what I'll do, Ben, I know I've talked a lot about this project. I will definitely send it to you, so
perfect.
that you can
Thanks.
see the work that we did. I think the interesting
Perfect.
thing about that one is that, it's a very unique tone of voice and it's a very unique mindset that he used to approach the work that you wouldn't
Right.
necessarily see with other commercial lawyers. And I think that's the
Mm.
power of, well, branding, but also within that, the sort of verbal
Yeah.
aspect
Right.
of
Yeah.
branding.
It's pretty interesting stuff, right? It's
Yeah.
pretty interesting stuff. And I think that's one thing is
Mhm.
you're trying to help everybody with that so that that's the end goal of the thing you achieve, right? Is um, that you make people feel like when they work with you that they got value, but also that you added value, but also that type of project is the most fulfilling.
It's very fulfilling. It's not something that we do every day, and I would say what made everything click with him was his self-awareness and his mindset, right?
Well, I think that's crucial for working with clients, and I think sometimes I've done that too, where people have said to me, "How come you didn't end up working with that person?" And I'm like, "Well, it was money for one. They didn't want to pay the money, or they didn't get why they had to pay the money, and it was also the mindset." And one of my things I've learned over the 3+ years that I've done this to really work on, and when I look for, I wouldn't call it an ideal client, but maybe it was, yeah, like the mindset is that you actually want to do this and you actually want to work at this.
Yeah.
Like you're not
Yes.
just doing it because you're checking off a box. You actually are paying money because you want to actually um, grow, right?
Yes, you're invested in the exchange, and you
Yeah,
understand that in order for copywriters and content writers like us to do our best work, you
yeah,
know, you have to be
yeah,
willing to go a little deep as well, and
yeah.
that's ultimately gonna serve your business better for the
Oh,
long
easy,
run.
but yeah, yeah, easy, easy. And I oftentimes think people are just like, well, I got to do social media. You know what it's like, right? I have to do social media, and I should just do it, and I'd hire someone to help me do it or do it for me
Yeah.
because I think it's something I need to do because everybody's telling me I need to do it, rather than really realizing that, well, the reason you're going to do it is because of this, 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 and this. Like these are your goals. Like people ask me to do social media projects, and one of the first things I tell them is, I'm like, okay, so like, what's your strategy and like, what are your goals? Well, we want more eyeballs and we want engagement.
Yeah.
I'm like, for what purpose do you want that? Just because, or because there's a reason, right? There,
Exactly.
and then when they think about it and they go, oh yeah, I haven't thought about it, or yeah, I actually need to get this many more customers because I need to grow my revenue this much because I'm trying to pay off all the debts in my business and I need more clients to basically make more money. Then you're like, okay, now we understand why we're doing what we're doing, not just because someone told you you should do social media.
Certainly, and, when you don't start with strategy,
Yeah.
it's like, "Oh, I need a Facebook page or I need an Instagram account."
Yep.
Well, is that actually where your target clients live?
Exactly.
You know?
Oh yeah.
So
Well, Instagram's great for visual. Yeah, but maybe your clients aren't on Instagram,
yeah,
right?
maybe
Maybe
exactly,
they're
you
somewhere
know?
else, right? So
And
yeah,
and if you have to, make decisions about where to allocate resources effectively, if you can't do all the bells and whistles, then you
yeah,
need to be really strategic and
yeah,
start with one where you know your clients are gonna be. You know,
yeah.
master that or get a rhythm down and then move on to a different channel. There's so much noise about there about having to do all the things all the time, but that is just a quick way to feel overwhelmed,
Oh yeah,
share
oh
market,
yeah,
and you need to ground it in, like you said, your goals, and deeper than that, your why, and to have strategy. That is, I I could yell about strategy until I'm blue in the face. You know,
Well, you could, but you're preaching to the converted, and
yeah.
you and I could talk about it all day. But
Strategy. Yeah.
but it's like, you know, it's like we've run through all the questions I gave you. I think we've had a good discussion. So thank you for doing this, and I've shared the comments in the chat. So we're going to wrap it up there, and then I'll be sharing and posting around in some Facebook groups and on my LinkedIn as well. Okay.
Cool.
So thanks, Victoria. I appreciate your time. That was
Yes,
awesome.
I know.
And we'll talk to everyone soon.
Yeah, sounds good. Thanks so much.